Hey, what's going on, guys? Coming back to you with a leg day today. Um, this is a posterior focused leg day, so it's a lot of hamstrings and glutes. Those are the two main focuses of today. And here I'm just setting up the leg extension, or the leg curl, seated leg curl. The lying leg curl was available, and I was going to do that, but if I have my preference between lying leg curl and seated, I typically go for seated, especially if it's this Prime seated leg curl machine here. It's really great because you could, again, with Prime, you could always mess with the tension profiles. So I always set the profile to have half the tension in the middle, half the tension at the very bottom range of motion. There I am waving to my buddy. But I set up the machine so that, I get a really good stretch at the very bottom of the range of motion, which as you can see is where my legs are fully extended. A lot of people, when I get on the machines they're always at the, they don't really seem to do them this way, and I'm not sure exactly why. Really want to get the most stretch as I can typically when I train, and it's always on like a setting or two lower. People aren't really fully stretching at the very top, so I adjusted it so that it would include that really good stretch there. And so this is just a warm-up set. I'm just getting the feel for the movement. A little bit of a burn, but nothing crazy, nothing to failure. And now I'm just working my way up in weight. It's interesting with leg curls. It takes, for me at least, it takes like 4 or 5 sets before I feel strong on them. Like for my first working set, I had already done 3 warm-up sets here, and I really struggled to get like 10 reps at like a weight that normally I'd be able to do for way more than that. And then on my second and third working set of the same weight, I was feeling way stronger, and I actually think I got like 1 more rep. So it's one of those things that like, you may think you're ready and primed, but you may not be. And that's why people do what are called potentiation sets. It's like a version of a feeder set, if you're familiar with that. And a potentiation set, sort of the idea is like you're gonna basically hit a set with the same with the working set weight for 2 or 3 reps or higher than the working set weight. So you might even go higher in weight than your working set and just get like 1 or 2 or 3 reps, and that's just meant to sort of like shock your wake up your legs in a way, and get those muscle fibers firing. So this is I think my 3rd working set here. Really intense stuff, good stuff on leg curls today. I always start off my posterior leg day with leg curls to warm up the hamstrings and also get really good beat the crap out of them really. So here I'm doing stiff-legged deadlifts or RDLs. I think they're interchangeable. People always try to explain to me the difference between stiff-legged deadlifts and RDLs, and they're literally the same thing every time. I'm still waiting for someone to really convincingly tell me they're different. But anyway, what's of note here is just how little of a range of motion I'm getting. Like, look how far down I'm getting before I can't go down anymore. I was really feeling stiff today, which is normal when I do stiff-legged deadlifts. It takes it takes like 3 or 4 warm-up sets for me to really, stretch out my hamstrings enough so I can get good enough depth. But what's of note here is kind of the way that I set these up. I push my hips back and my belly out, and I keep my chest really high. And what that does is it pre-stretches the hamstrings. And what that means is that just by pushing your hips back, your belly out, and keeping your chest high, your hamstrings are already stretched out. And so when you lower the weight, you're digging in to that stretch, which is like kind of like the benefit of doing this motion, this movement at all. And so I'm just building up in weight here, and you can see that I'm holding the weight sometimes in the stretch position. That's a hard word to say. And the reason for that is like kind of the cue that I use for how to know how deep enough to go is I find the depth at which the pain of the stretch is really bad, and I hold it there for a second or a beat, and then I come up, and I just try to find where that is every time. And across, three or four, 3 or 4 warm-up sets into my working sets. Right here is one of my working sets. I'm able to get much deeper, and I'm controlling the slowly controlling the eccentric, getting nice and deep, and then coming up and squeezing. A lot of people screw these up. They let their backs round, and because they prioritize getting deeper, the depth of the stiff-legged deadlift is their priority, where it really should just be the stretch of your hamstrings. So, I'm not getting crazy depth, but I'm definitely hitting them nice and strong. Moving on, we get the hip thrusts, another suggestive movement. A lot of leg day movements are funny and suggestive in a lot of ways, but it is what it is. So my whole approach with hip thrusts is, my approach with all lifts is that you really want explosive concentrics. And so what I've noticed, coaching people for many years, is that when they finally nail down controlling the eccentric and slowing things down in the lowering phase, it tends to seep into the concentric, meaning the explosive, where you're supposed to be most explosive. So they have these slow eccentrics, which is great, but then their concentrics are just as slow. It's you have to prioritize an explosive, as explosive as you can under control. You don't want to get hurt, obviously, but you can see that I'm really driving pretty hard here, and it's like humping a whale or something. But that's that's what you're seeing, and it hits the glutes pretty well. I'm kind of hot and cold on hip thrusts. I think they could be, there are other movements that hit the glutes just as well or better, but I'm on kind of a hip thrust kick. I think they're connecting really well, rather. And so here you can see that, the explosiveness of the reps. That's what you should really take away here. I control the eccentric nicely, but then I explode up, and that's kind of how you want to approach all your lifts. You don't want to, slow concentrics, I think, are a great way to rob yourself of gains. So just hump in the air. But yeah, I've kind of surprised myself with how much weight I've been able to do on these. I think I can go heavier than this, but the last time I did these, this was this was a struggle for me. So moving on, just hitting some quads. So even though this is a posterior leg day, meaning hamstrings and glutes, I always like to include kind of towards the end of the second half, some quad movements. And so I'll hit 4 sets of these, 4 really hard sets of these, which is a lot of working sets. But if you consider the fact that it's not a quad day, that's a good amount of stimulus for growth. So you can, in 1 week, you can hit the quads twice. That's good frequency. And then by the time the quad day comes around, they're recovered, but you still were able to get in 4 really hard sets. You can see I'm really squeezing really hard. I'm controlling the eccentrics nicely. I don't go easy on these. It's another set, another shot of my butt. But yeah, just something that you might want to consider adding in, extra quad stimulus on posterior leg day. Something you might want to, consider when watching is that, I try really, it's second nature at this point, but I put a lot of emphasis on making sure that even though I'm dying and I'm really tired and it's towards the end of a set, I really try to control the eccentric with the same tempo across all my lifts, across all my reps rather. And, it's a good practice to get into. But anyway, moving on, I just hit 2 quick sets of somewhat light, because my legs are already cooked by now. So I was able to go pretty light, but these are sumo squats. I just wanted to kind of finish off the glutes. These are different than wide stance squats. Wide stance squats are, you get a lot of adductor and stuff like that. Sure, you get a lot of glutes, but with sumo squats, you don't really need to have your stance be that wide. You just need to have your knees drive over your pinky toe and have a 45-degree stance. So you want to have your feet pointed out 45 degrees angles, and then let your knees drive over where your pinky toes are, and get nice and deep. And and so anyway, I hit 2 sets of that just real quick, and then moved on to my final movement of the day, which is calves, which are my nemesis. And I prefer to do them on the leg press machine. You don't really have to, there are two ways of hitting your calves. So you can do them with a bent knee. So when you seated calf raises, you're seated and your knees are bent. And that tends to bias the soleus of the calf muscle. And when your legs are straight and your knees are locked, they tend to hit the bigger muscle, the gastrocnemius of the calves. And so you have a few options with these. There's a lot of standing calf raise machines. They're pretty solid. But if you don't want to like load up your back after like a leg day or whatever with on a machine like that, you could do these seated here on like a leg press. If you have an arsenal like I have here, it has this little platform to perform them on, and I find them to be really good. You can load up a lot of weight too, and you can get some really powerful contractions here. So I'm trying to get my toes trying to get as much of a stretch as I can. Good for mobility as well. I don't really do much mobility work, and I attribute my ability to have good mobility with just getting a really good range of motion with all my lifts. You see that I'm just doing some partial reps at the end there to finish up, and that was leg day. Brutal, and I'm in pain right now, so definitely a solid leg day. I'll have another one of these up pretty soon for an upper body day, but thanks for watching, and have a good rest of your day.